here to demonstrate 4 classic acts of the sideshow. If you're not familiar with the sideshow, people are more familiar with the term freak show. They're not exactly the same thing. I'm not going to get into it. It would turn into a half-an-hour long lecture. We don't have that kind of time. Right? I want to thank the people for sitting in the front row. You guys are really brave souls. It's these laughs. You'll be okay, I promise. I haven't puked on anybody yet. 4 classic acts of the sideshow, and I always like to start with one called the Pain-Proof Man. The Pain-Proof Man is a variation on the strongman act. It's used to illustrate one's immunity to pain. So the first half of the Pain-Proof Man does involve the common household mousetrap. I'm sure everybody in here has seen one of these before, and if you've ever gotten your finger stuck in one, chances are you'll probably never do it again. They're part of my act. I can't avoid them. A lot of people think that because I'm a performer, I'm up here on stage, that my trap might be some sort of fake, this might be some sort of prop. Now to demonstrate to everybody that my trap is real, I'm going to pull this piece of wire back like so. And if you listen very carefully, you may hear some sort of snap. Obviously it's a real mouse trap. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I grew up watching a lot of Tom and Jerry. Because of this, I'm very familiar with mouse traps and I can set them up fairly easily. Now, the first thing you're going to notice about these traps is that I'm obviously far too large to fit inside them. Or if I did, it'd be a different type of show, more along the lines of the world's smallest man. But because I'm not him, I've got to come up with some other way to entertain and amuse you. So hopefully what I've come up with is sufficient enough. But it's not so bad, definitely on the not going anyway. Excuse me 1 second. It's no steak dinner, but who am I to complain, right? Now, the first half of the Pain-Proof Man did not impress. I do apologize. The second half uses a slightly larger trap. Here are my hands to hold a Victor Oneida 1.5. If you've never seen one of these before, this is essentially a miniaturized version of the bear trap. Not suitable for catching bears. They don't make bears this small. This trap is far more suitable for catching animals like bobcats, coyotes, muskrats, possums, raccoons, small children. Works on the same principle that bear traps do. Place the trap like so, jaws, place the pin underneath the trigger, place a piece of bait around the jaws, the animal will come by, minding its own business, notices the food, steps on the switch, and it slams shut on the poor animal's leg like so. Now that we understand how this works, I'm going to set this up just one more time. I always take a second to say that I do love performing. How could I not? I love the sideshow. I love everything to do with it. The one thing I've always heard about love is that love hurts. Granted, since I'm working with a steel jaw trap, I definitely think that love bites is a little more appropriate. Now, as you can see, it does appear that my hand is in one solid piece and I can move all my fingers, which means I don't have any fractures. Perhaps you think I'm just trying to bluff my way through this. Maybe you think I'm just trying to pull your leg. Maybe you think the trap's just going to slide right off. I'm going to ask you to help me out. Okay. You can stay seated. Stay comfortable. It's what I want you to do. It's going to be quite simple. I'm just going to step down here real quick. I'm going to ask you to pull on that chain right there. Let's prove this thing real. If it falls off, it's fake. If it stays on, it's real. Everybody agree, right? You look skeptical. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. So obviously, no matter how hard we pull, thank you, that's not going anywhere, right? Right. Right. Real deal. Now, getting my hand in between these two jaws is only the first half of the act. Thank you for helping me, by the way. So getting my hand out is the second half. Hopefully I made it out okay. More than half my audience probably doesn't care about the okay part. For my sake, let's make sure my hand's okay. There you have it, no lacerations. Short fractures, it is a fully functioning hand, lucky me. Believe it or not, some people have asked me if my hand is fake. I don't get it. I can assure you I've had these hands for 26 years and they're in great working condition. This next act is a sideshow classic known as the human blockhead. The reason why it's called the human blockhead is probably because you have to be a real blockhead to attempt this. It's really quite simple. I only need a few things for this act, and the first thing I'm going to need is one nail in here and I have 5 inches of steel. Keep in mind the nail does not bend or fold in any way, shape, or form, nor does it collapse. So we can safely assume that this is the real deal. Now I've also got this claw hammer right here, and I've purchased a claw hammer. Ball peen, sorry. Feel free to correct me if I say anything wrong. Ball peen hammer. Purchased both these items at a local hardware store, so there's nothing out of the ordinary about them. Now what makes this such an unusual act is that it also does require one human nose. The way this is going to work is that I'm going to insert this nail into my nostril. I'm going to use this hand to try to straight back into the very center of my skull until one of two things happens. Either it's going to go horribly wrong and the lights are going to go out up here and I'm going to drop right before your eyes, and if that happens, it's happening to me, not you guys. Don't worry about it, it's not your problem. Now, should everything go according to plan, the nail should be implanted into the very center of my skull, at which the points of the nail will be resting against the back of my throat. This means I'm going to be roughly about a quarter inch away from my brainstem. Could you imagine if I tripped and fell with this thing inside my nose? I would probably never get back up. So let's see how far back this thing goes. Stay in school. I like how nobody's going to stop me. Let's see how you are. Okay. We want blood. We want blood. There you have it, 5 inches of steel into the very center of my skull, grinding up against bone, tissue, and sinew. It's the fastest way to clear the sinuses that I know of. Whenever I have trouble breathing, I just grab a nail and shove it back there. I'm breathing freely in no time. Now, as the old saying goes, what goes in must come out. There you have it, safely extracted from my skull, safe and sound. One solid piece, and I do believe I'm at full mental capacity. No, don't take my word for it. Here comes my favorite part of the act, what makes it all worthwhile for me at the end. He knows what's coming. It's not gross, it's recycling. Now, the human blockhead is a sideshow act that was invented in 1929 by a man named Melvin Burkhart. Anybody who's decided to at least attempt to shove nails in their own face ever since has him to thank. Now, because of the age of the act, a lot of people have seen it. Not everybody's impressed. Performers have come with all sorts of variations to the human blockhead. One of my favorites is an act known as the dental floss. Everybody knows that dental flossing is a great way to clean out a dirty mouth, so one can only assume that dental flossing is a great way to clean out a dirty mind. What's the balloons for? Guys, this is a really great party trick. I've got plenty of free drinks at bars with this thing. Ladies don't have to do stuff like this. They just gotta show up, the drinks will come. Us guys, us poor, unfortunate souls, do stuff like this. On that note, I've got a bag of balloons here. I'd be willing to share some with you guys in case you're interested. Nobody's ever really interested. In case you are, you should at least see what you can get yourself into. So without further ado, the mental floss splash zone. You okay?
Yeah.
There you have it, the mental floss. So now that I'm all spick and span up there, and there's not a dirty thought inside, I'm going to move on to my last act. It's a little more respectable, I promise. Give me a second chance, guys. Let me redeem myself. What I'm going to demonstrate for you guys right now is an ancient performing art that originated in India, roughly around 2000 BC. This 4,000-year-old act is one of the most dangerous activities a human being can engage in. Each and every time I do this act, I do come within mere millimeters of my life. I'm in fact risking my life up here on stage for your entertainment. I'm going to do some sword swallowing for you guys. A lot of people think sword swallowing is a magic trick, an illusion. There's no way somebody can physically swallow a sword. Sword swallowers must use something like this. Clever, right? It's not the way it works. Sword swallowing is very real, and it is very dangerous. There are some magicians that like to pretend they're sword swallowers. Use something very similar to one of these things right here. If I run into one of them, chances are I'm probably going to punch him in the stomach. Afterwards, I'm going to ask the audience if they want to see somebody do it for real. To demonstrate the fact that I do indeed possess this skill, I want to start with an act called coat check. It's called coat check because it does involve one wire coating. This right here is essentially a sword swallower's training device. This is actually the coat hanger I used to teach myself this art. I don't recommend teaching yourself this art. I use it as a bit of a warm-up and to demonstrate to everybody here that what you see is what you get. No tricks, no gimmicks. And this is coat check. Never in my life did I think I'd be doing this.
What is your mom?
What does my mom think? My mom's heavily tattooed and pierced. I don't care what she doesn't matter what she says.
She probably says,
She's probably like, look at my son! He's been on TV! He's kind of famous. Here's a picture of him. Granted, he was 3 years old in this photo, but it's him, trust me. We quit horsing around. Feel free to stop me if I get a little out of hand, guys. Now that we got that out of the way, let's move on to the ancient art of sword swallowing. In the world today, there are roughly about 100 sword swallowers still performing. That's 1 in every 125 million people. There have been more people that have climbed Mount Everest than there are people who have ever swallowed a sword. Probably has something to do with the fact that we keep dying. We're literally a dying breed. Here in my hands, I hold a 15-inch sword. Keep in mind the sword here does not telescope, fold, or collapse into the handle. It is one solid piece of metal. It is the real deal. 15 inches of steel is the shortest sword a performer can swallow and still be considered a sword swallower, according to the Sword Swallowers Association International. It is a real thing. Look it up if you'd like. It costs about $35 a join. Then you gotta go through all this hustle and bustle to prove that you're a sword swallower. Then get a t-shirt. $35 t-shirt. And it's white. Sword Swallowers Association. Sword swallowers do it to the hilt. It's terrible. Back to the show. A lot of performers, before they swallow a blade, will say down the hatch without a scratch. It's kind of our mantra. I'm no different. So here we go. Down the hatch without a scratch. It's the manliest way to brush your teeth. Let's move on to the 20-inch blade. This is where it gets fun. A lot of people ask me how sword swallowing works. I've got an illustration in this book that demonstrates how it works. But the gist of it is that it's between the lips, over the gums, behind the heart, between the lungs. I'm hoping the sword stops roughly about here. Now, after swallowing the sword, what I like to do is make this twice as dangerous as regular sword swallowing. Because everybody knows that regular sword swallowing is not enough, right? Yeah. She doesn't even want to watch. Don't do it. Don't do your job. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swallow the sword just like I did before. Put the tip sort of my mouth, tip my head back, lower it into my body like so. Afterwards, I'm going to once again double over my body in half, bend at the hips, and take a deep bow before everybody here, just to show you guys that this is not some sort of illusion, as if you don't believe me already enough. So if I swallow this sword, take a bow, pull it out of my throat, and I don't die, if you would like, you're more than welcome to clap like I did something good. All right, here we go. Down the hatch, without a scratch, bottoms up. That was right out of my house, slice of pizza. I'm sorry. It's only $2. Sword swallowers gotta eat too. Swords don't cut it. Cut it! It's almost like comedy, isn't it? Thank you, Mr. Todd Robbins, for that. Just so you don't think I'm stealing it. Todd Robbins is one of my favorite performers. 20 inches of steel into the very center of my stomach, and it does appear that I have eluded death once again, or at least we'll find out in about 5 minutes. But that is my little demonstration. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions for me, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I am a volunteer. Any donations you'd like to throw in that bucket right there, it's greatly appreciated. Here's that illustration I was promising you guys. You guys are more than welcome to look at it and pass it around. I get asked all the time how sword swallowing works. So I always bring this book with me just to show you guys. Yeah, I just did that.
So I got you into doing it. You just saw somebody else.
Well, see, it's a funny story, actually. I woke